Hey there, welcome back to the Building HVAC Science podcast. Today's episode, Eric and I talked to longtime HVAC pro and educator and friend, Adam Mufich. He's going to share his unique path through the industry from growing up in a third-generation HVAC family to starting his own company to becoming a trainer at the National Comfort Institute. We get into how social media unexpectedly played a pivotal role in Adam's professional growth, helping him to connect with future collaborators through YouTube, live streams, and online forums. We explore his evolution into technical writing and training, his idea to describe what he's seeing very craftily, very easily understood by fellow technicians. He gives us his thoughts on public speaking and what it's like to work alongside industry veterans like Dave Richardson and Jim Davis. And we also talk about NCI's new initiatives, including the upcoming High-Performance Heat Pump Retrofit class and the ComfortMax workflow integration with MeasureQuick. We also discuss why real-world hands-on training matters so much, the importance of airflow and static pressure measurement, and the philosophy behind if you're not measuring, you're just guessing. We also talk about modern tools that interface with MeasureQuick and how they elevate technician performance, and the NCI Summit. Some quotable quotes from this episode. If you're not measuring, you're just guessing. That's the NCI philosophy. For better precision tools won't replace you. They'll help you up your game. And from Adam, I'll never know everything about HVAC. That's why I keep learning every day. Love that philosophy. Okay, let's get into the episode where Eric and I have a conversation with Adam about his journey from Toolbelt to trainer.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Building HVAC Science podcast. Eric Kaiser here, the great Bill Spohn right over there, and another great person with us today, Mr. Adam Mufich. Let's see, what all do you do now, Adam? I know you're with NCI. Are you still doing podcasts and live streams as well?
Yeah, we've cut down on that some, but yeah, a couple times a month. We were doing it religiously every Friday for years, probably 4 years, and we've cut back a little bit. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's the HVAC Overtime show on YouTube there.
Did somebody stop paying you overtime to do that show?
That's the problem. I was never compensated. A lot of free labor.
That's a labor of love, though, I think, doing those shows like that. And it does take a lot of work to show up every Friday night and take time away from family and do that type of stuff. So I can speak from experience on that one.
Yeah.
Although I didn't stick around doing it quite as long as Adam has. How long have you guys been doing that now?
I think we just hit 6 years.
Wow, man, that's a solid run and still going too.
Not to dwell on it too much, but how'd you all find each other, come together to do that?
Kind of a funny story. Early on, you guys probably know there's a handful of the original HVAC YouTubers. And there was one YouTuber that every so often would have a Friday or Saturday night live stream. And I would just watch them. My wife was watching like Desperate Housewives or something like that. And so I would sit on my phone and
watch Desperate Technicians.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking, that's a good show name right there, Desperate HVAC Techs.
During the stream, he said something incorrect. And in the chat, I'd never really chatted back before. But I'm like, I think you're a little bit off on that. And he's like, no, I'm not off. If you think I'm off, why don't you come in here and explain it to me? So I'm like, all right. So I did. And then he kept inviting me back on. Then Zach Ciota at some point from HVAC Shop Talk podcast invited me and a handful of the other guys. Joe he jumped on the same type of deal on the weekend thing through Chris's YouTube channel. I asked him a question, actually on audio equipment. And he's like, hey, why don't you just call me and I'll explain it to you? I'm like, all right. And we just instantly clicked and became friends. Kind of the same story with Bill. So it's weird because they're probably my closest friends and they live absolutely nowhere near me.
And that's Bill Russell and Chris Stevens, just so people know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and OT Joe.
Yeah.
Because that's all we know about him is his name.
Who has
Joe.
no last name.
Yeah, he's a mystery.
Has no first name, no last name. He just has a name, and we don't know where he lives.
It was funny, this past Christmas, he's like super Italian, and they grow tomatoes. His whole family grows like a ton of tomatoes, and there's a certain time of year where they make pasta sauce. And for Christmas, he sent over each of us a mason jar of homemade pasta sauce. And I got it, and my wife is like, we can't eat that. I'm like, why? And she's like, you don't know anything about this guy, and he's probably going to poison you. I'm like, well, there is that. So I'm like, fine, the family won't eat it. I'll have it one day. I go on a trip to teach an NCI class. I come back the one night, they all ate dinner, and I go to look for the pasta sauce. I'm like, where's the pasta sauce? She's like, oh, we ate it. You ate the poison pasta sauce.
Wow. She just wanted to get you out of the house so she had more, apparently, then.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what I heard.
So besides YouTube and pasta sauce, what do we need to know about Adam? What's your background? For people that didn't listen to episode 112, which I'll link in the show notes. We had John before, but give us a recap.
I am third generation in HVAC. My grandpa was a chief engineer at several of the big buildings in Chicago. Probably the most notable one is the Palmer House Hotel. And my dad worked along with him when he was a kid. My dad told me a story. The house he grew up in, one time, I don't know, he was 12 or 13 years old or whatever, but his dad, my grandpa, woke him up one Saturday morning and handed him a sledgehammer. He's like, let's go. We got to get to work. And they busted up all the sidewalks. It's a Chicago house, so no driveway, but they busted up all the sidewalks next to the house. And they ran a very early version of a snowmelt system under the new concrete with black iron pipe, believe it or not. I don't know how long it lasted. He didn't have any types of controls or whatever. And whenever it would snow, they would just go downstairs and open a valve and melt the snow. So my dad started working for the Train company back when Train installed and serviced their own equipment in the 70s. And he worked with them through the 80s. And then he started his own company, a residential HVAC company, in the early 90s. And I worked with him on weekends, just learning what the tools were called, tagging along in that. And then after I graduated high school in 99, I started working with him full time. And it was like, hey, I'm going to take a year off school and I'm just going to work for a summer. And one thing led to another, and I'm here now. I worked for my dad for about 12 years, and then he sold the company, and I started my own company, A-Team Heating and Air Conditioning, out of the western suburb of Chicago. I ran that for just over 12 years, and then I just sold it last year and started working with National Comfort Institute.
Did you see your trajectory getting into training? Was that starting to happen?
Not at all. It was wild. And it's funny because I just had a conversation before we got on here with a friend of mine. And I feel like it was like the perfect storm and the stars aligned in terms of getting involved with podcasting and the YouTube show and starting to get some recognition online with that. And then for years, when I was running my own company, I always wanted to attend all these different trainings, like blower door trainings, the ACA load calc residential design class, all these different things. And I always was so busy that I put it off. And it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I don't care. And I did it. And I learned quite a bit. And I think that's what pushed me over the edge, where I thought that I probably have more value in sharing what I've learned than actually being in the field and practicing what I know.
And the fact that you move from maybe not being aware to awareness to competency, then being able to share the competency, that's a journey that's irreplaceable. And then when you get in front of a group of people, it's like, I've been on the road that you want to go on, and you can be their guide. That's so cool.
Yeah, and that was a whole nother thing, which I'm still trying to develop my skill set with public speaking, in that I still get the nerves. It's like a learned thing to get up and be able to talk in front of a room full of strangers. So it's getting easier. Every time I do it, it gets easier. But one thing I noticed is if you have a multi-day class that you're talking in front of the same group of people, the first day is the hardest. And then you learn who the people are and you're more comfortable the second day. But for me, speaking at a conference or whatever else, it's like every time you get up in front of people, it's like a new crowd. It's the first day jitters all over again.
Yeah. I know you probably know this, but you just be your authentic self. And you are. That's the way I'd sense it around you. But one of the words I used in the title of the podcast we did before was humble. And I think you embraced that also. And I know you've started to do a lot of writing, but what was it like starting at the really beginning to do some of the technical writing? And you did some for HVAC school, then some for NCI. Go ahead and tell us about that.
David Richardson, actually my boss at NCI, he encouraged me. Somebody had a comment on Facebook. I don't even remember what it was about. and I replied to it, and he sent me a message and he said, "You really should consider writing. You do well at describing things and vocalizing what's in your head." I thought, okay. I started writing for HVAC school, and actually, Bill, you're the first person who read anything I wrote. I sent it to you as a review, which I felt terrible after the fact. You gave me some comments and I edited it, but then when I sent it over, I sent over the original version and none of your comments made it. But yeah, that's another thing that it's very difficult to do, because now I've written for HVAC school. I've written for High Performance HVAC Today, which is NCI's magazine. And then I have a monthly spot in contracting business. So with school, it was like, hey, if there was something I wanted to talk about, it's easy just to let it out. But now that I'm forced to do something on a monthly basis, you start running out of ideas. You're like, what should I talk about this month?
Seems like comments on live streams and Facebook are stepping stones in your career.
We have something at NCI once a year. It's called Trainer Week, where all of the trainers get together at the headquarters. And last year, everyone did their own presentation on a different topic. And David asked me to do it on social media and the impact on me. So I actually went through and I talked about all the different people that I've met, all the very notable people. And I actually included both of you in that, believe it or not.
Thank you.
And how I met each person and how they've impacted me, and how powerful social media can be.
I think it's had a positive effect on all three of us here and a lot of our friends in the world today through the various industries that we're associated with. It can be a very powerful and good thing if it's used well.
Yeah. In our pre-conversation, you talked about a couple things you're working on with NCI that you'd like to share with our listeners. One was on heat pumps and one was on ComfortMax. Why don't you dig into that a little?
Yeah, so we have a new class we're going to launch this fall, which is a high-performance heat pump retrofit class. And it's going to be a one-day class that gives you, I struggle to say high level because we don't dig into the intense nuts and bolts on any one topic, but we talk about the importance of everything, like manual S, airflow, duct leakage, all that. So basically, like if you want to have a successful heat pump retrofit, whether it be dual fuel or converting to an all-electric system, what are the important things that you need to pay attention to and test beforehand, and then when you test out the system and commission the system?
How is that class offered?
That's going to be a live class, which all of our live classes are usually paired. They come as a bundle, and you could either go to one of the two classes or you get a discount to go to both. But yeah, it's going to be certain trainers. Basically, NCI, our business model is we travel around the country, and it's an upskill thing where we train individual technicians, whole companies, or whatever it is. But it's like existing technicians, not somebody that's just coming into the field, and give them a little boost in their knowledge set.
Who are some of your co-trainers there at NCI? People might recognize them or maybe not realize that they also do that too.
So the first trainer that I think probably the most recognizable would be David Richardson. He's been around and with the NCI for quite some time now. Al Diambola is another one. Casey Contreras, he teaches combustion, and he's learned everything he knows from Jim Davis, which I'm sure anyone involved with HVAC who listened to this probably has at least heard the name Jim Davis. He's probably one of the most recognizable names in combustion analysis and carbon monoxide. And then let's see, Paul Wiebolt, Jeff Sturgeon, Andrew Smith. There's a whole laundry list of different trainers that works for NCI.
Got it. And we'll put in the link in the show notes, a link to the NCI classes so people can see the array of classes and things that are going on there.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say about our classes in that, I think NCI, they got started and got their foothold in HVAC focusing on airflow. That was one of the invisible things that nobody really paid attention to for a long time. But we really teach people how to reduce static pressure, diagnose a system, and improve system airflow on existing systems. And then we have residential and commercial air balancing class where it's, hey, now we're going to direct the airflow to where we want to go, wherever it should be delivered throughout the home.
Do they teach you like a structure for the classes now that you're a trainer? Is there a certain protocol you follow? as you move through the curriculum, the materials?
Yeah, so there's a probationary period that's involved with any class that any trainer teaches. They don't just throw you to the wolves and say, hey, teach this class. So we go through this process to learn the materials in the class to make sure that we're presenting in the way that represents NCI. And then basically each class has its own class manual. So you'll have one or two books, field reference guide and or a class manual that each individual in the class will get a copy of. And we go through that with PowerPoint slides throughout the day. And then the PowerPoint slides are more like, I like to think of them as bullet points. And it just keeps the instructor on task on what he should be talking about. And then you elaborate with your experiences, with your stories, give examples and that.
Very cool.
You've been with NCI, what, a year now? Close to it?
Just over a year, yeah.
Just over a year. Nice. Now, I've done some NCI training myself over the years, and they can get pretty technical in some of those courses as well and pretty deep into some various things. But they also do some hands-on in some of the classes that I've been in.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we really try to do is anytime we schedule a class, we try to pick a location that has live equipment. It makes it a lot easier than to just read from a book or watch PowerPoints all day. We have live tools in each one of the classes that we try to play with whenever possible. I think that's a really good experience for anyone in the class because a lot of people, myself included, we learn by doing and not just by hearing.
Yeah, it helps a lot when we can get those tools out and then figure out how to put them where they need to go, what some of the pitfalls are, how to make the calculations or interpret that data coming out of it. That's probably one of the biggest things I've got out of the NCI classes that I've attended is what is that data coming out of the instruments? What does it mean? And how do I interpret it into meaningful actions?
One of the things that I appreciate a lot about NCI is they came up with something because one of the main things we focus on with airflow is static pressure. What is static pressure? And a lot of people aren't measuring it, or some people, when they are measuring it, they're not measuring it properly. So when you measure static pressure, and once you have those numbers, what do they mean? How do you diagnose the system with pressure? And NCI came up with something called static pressure budgets, which gives you a limit to look at to say, hey, my pressure in this point is too high. And it gives you a guide to what you should be looking at to diagnose and solve that issue.
And that can help you out in designing things as well, too. So when you're starting out even designing something.
Absolutely. There was an article I wrote for HVAC school called, this was early on, so pardon the grammar in that. It's probably not the best written article, but
Maybe it's that one that I tried to help you with, but hey, sometimes things happen.
Very likely. It's called, I believe, Replacing Residential Equipment with Predictable Results. And basically what I talk about is the importance when you're selling a new system on an existing home and an existing duct system, why you should measure static pressure and fan airflow, and then how you could use fan law 2 to interpret what recommendations should be made. Basically like, hey, am I going to upgrade the filter? Should I really pay attention to which evaporator coil I'm using? Just so you have the results you're looking for. Because I remember early on, maybe 8 years ago, whatever it was, it would always bother me when my company would replace a system. You go to an existing home and it had a PSC blower motor. And a PSC blower motor is a constant speed motor. It just runs at one speed no matter what the duct pressure is, but you don't necessarily deliver the correct amount of airflow. But when you replace it with a new ECM motor, variable speed, that motor is able to overcome higher static pressure, so it ramps up to deliver the correct amount of airflow. I didn't realize all that back years ago. And we would replace systems, and when we started up the new system, the new furnace would sound like a freight train. And it always bothered me. And I measured static pressure and it was off the charts. And I never could understand why that was.
Yeah, that relationship between airflow and static pressure, I think, is a piece that maybe a lot of us missed early on.
Absolutely.
And understanding the change in the relationship between the two. Because I'm like you, I started measuring a lot of static pressure, but didn't really play around. And part of that, too, was it was really hard to measure airflow early on in especially residential ductwork.
Yep. And one thing that I found recently is even once you started understanding you had a grasp on total external static pressure and plotting fan airflow on a fan table, I didn't realize there's mistakes on a lot of fan tables out there. And you don't really catch that. And you're using the fan table as it is gospel. But when you start actually measuring fan airflow with, let's say, a tool like the TrueFlow Grid, you're actually getting a true measurement of the system. The technology we have available to us right now, there's no excuse not to measure airflow and set it up properly.
Yeah, unfortunately, these manufacturers aren't not infallible in some of their data sometimes.
I think a lot of that is probably not a flaw. They're not trying to be deceitful, but I think they probably measure things and at certain different operating points, and then it's interpreted, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Interpolated?
Interpolated data where they do calculations.
Or extrapolated if it's out past the
Extrapolated.
measuring. Extrapolated. There we go.
There you go.
Bill knows all this stuff. I don't know why we're trying to talk about it.
That's okay. No, important to share knowledge. And even I think what's something Jim Bergman and I have seen happen over the years is people possessing the knowledge on how the tests need to be run, retire, and don't always impart the why behind the way things are done. And if that's lost, then someone just goes to emulate it and it may not be, or something changes and they cannot replicate it. So again, it's important to do what you are doing, what NCI is doing is pass on this knowledge with the hands-on aspect. And a lot of what NCI does is measurements. What are some of the taglines that you use around NCI about measurements?
If you're not measuring, you're just guessing.
Okay. A couple of years ago, we teamed up with NCI TrueTech to make basically the NCI store on our website. And this is a pitch for it, but it goes along with the philosophy of NCI and getting people on board with the whys and the hows, and then TrueTech helping with the what, helping you get the tools. And you do have a process of some of the tools are reviewed for competency with your methods. That's the selection that we provide on the NCI store. And I'll throw a link in the show notes on that too.
Thank you.
Yep. September. What's going on in September with NCI?
So September 9th through 12th, we have the NCI Summit in Texas. And this is going to be the second summit that I've attended. And I got to tell you, it's an awesome conference. You're surrounded by a bunch of business owners and technicians that just really care about what they do and they want to make things better. So there's going to be a wide array of speakers and different companies that show up, all kinds of technicians from around the country. There are going to be maybe a little bit of hands-on classes. We're going to have live equipment there, but it reminds me of the symposium in a sense. It's very much so like the symposium, but we do things a little bit different. They have a full dinner. There's a awards banquet the one night. Everyone dresses up and wears a tie or sport jacket or whatever. It's cool. NCI pays tribute and passes out awards to contractors that are just doing an amazing job and going above and beyond their competition.
Excellent.
And this is open to contractors that aren't NCI members too. Anybody who signs up can attend this.
Oh, absolutely.
So as Eric mentioned, the summit is open to anyone, any contractor to come. But there are NCI members, and I know you're not like the business person for NCI, but could you talk a little bit about member benefits? What do members get if they join?
Yeah, members get, I'm probably not going to remember everything that they get because I'm definitely not on the sales side. But I think one of the big perks would be there's an additional discount on all tool purchases through TrueTech Tools and the Energy Conservatory. That's a huge one. And then anything, your membership and any training you do, you accrue NCI bucks. And those NCI bucks can be spent on like attending Summit. If you want to use that towards paying your way through Summit, or if future trainings, you could use it as a credit towards your trainings. We have monthly Power Pack emails that go out, which we always include a download. The download might be a process or procedure for your company. We do different webinars and all kinds of different little things for members in that. We actually, after Summit, we have, I don't know if it's open to everyone or just members, but we have a year-long monthly meeting where we get a bunch of the contractors together on a Zoom meeting. And everyone just goes through, we have one topic and we learn from each other. All the contractors share their experiences and we pick each other's brains. So what do they say? Rising tide elevates all ships or something like that.
Yeah, lifts all boats or floods your lawn or something like that.
Unless they got a really big hole in the bottom of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other benefit that I didn't mention was we offer tech support, free tech support to any NCI members. So any of their technicians can call us at any time and we'll walk them through whatever they're facing, any issues they have.
I can remember visiting the old offices in Sheffield Lake, up in the lake in Ohio, in north of Cleveland, and talking to somebody. It's like, oh, the phone's ringing. They stop right there. And I remember the late great Rob Falk talking about how when he would get in early, he'd be there on the phone too. All of them would be on the phone taking care of the needs of members. So very much a committed organization, committed to membership. Covered a lot of topics here. I'll throw a lot of links in the show notes to make sure people can catch up with it. I did find the page of membership benefits, so the whole laundry list will be available as a link.
I think we did miss one thing here, though.
What did we miss?
We mentioned this thing called ComfortMax earlier.
Oh, we did? Yeah. Let's go back.
We didn't get involved in that because you mentioned in our pre-show discussion, Adam, that there's a new ComfortMax coming out. And I'd like to dig into what is ComfortMax, because this is a thing that NCI's done. What is that really? And how can contractors use that?
So the new ComfortMax is actually going to be in a workflow in MeasureQuick. It's going to be a project workflow in MeasureQuick. And what it is, I like to describe it this way. So you have your HVAC equipment, and then you look at your system, including the ducts and the equipment. It's all one big package together. So you can have a certain amount of BTUs being moved through that equipment, but you might not have those BTUs delivered to the rooms. You might have duct leakage, you might have thermal gains or losses through the ductwork and that. ComfortMax, I think the best way to describe it is it was developed to solve comfort issues. So it's a pretty cool process. We use psychrometers, but you could use any Bluetooth psychrometer, and you have an equipment return, an equipment supply psychrometer, and then you have a couple psychrometers on return grills, and then 3 psychrometers on the supply registers in the middle of the system. You could use more than 3. The more you use, the more accurate it is. And then you go around and you measure all the delivered airflow with the flow hood. This is all automated in MeasureQuick now. And then it will generate 2 different reports, a contractor report and then a detailed report as well. And it shows what the equipment BTUs are and then the system BTUs. And it shows you what your duct leakage is. It gives you a system performance score, all kinds of different metrics it will spit out when you're done running ComfortMax.
Pretty awesome. Automated. You're saying it's automated.
Yep.
That's a good one. How do you address the topic when people say, oh, these tools, they take away from being a technician? They do too much. You should learn the hard way. Grab a hammer and nail and start from there. What's your response to that? Using these new fancy tools.
If you're going to argue that point where you're saying, hey, I shouldn't be using like Bluetooth psychrometers and MeasureQuick and all that, you can go back to saying, why are we using any kind of psychrometer? 5 or 6 years ago, whatever it was, I had a Fluke. It wasn't Bluetooth to measure wet bulb. Why are we using that? Why aren't we walking around in houses with the sling psychrometer, swinging it over our heads? Like, technology evolves and things get better and more accurate. And you still have to have a base understanding of what's going on. But precision tools, it's just going to up your game a little bit. And it's making your life easier as a technician.
Yeah.
And potentially more accurate too.
Yeah. And think about it this way. I read a manual recently, an airflow manual, where they were talking about measuring total system airflow. And they said the recommended method to measuring total system airflow is to traverse every supply register in a home with a hot wire anemometer, figure out the area, and then convert it to CFM for total system airflow. Imagine how long that would take. That is so out of date, and like technology changes. We have flow hoods now. We have the TrueFlow grid. We could plot fan airflow. There's so many different methods that we could use. Things change. Let's take advantage of it to speed up our workflows and make them more accurate.
Yeah. I think in some ways it addresses the labor shortage, and it also addresses costs too. If you don't have to go back out and fix a problem because you made a misdiagnosis, that's a big thing to help lower expenses for a business and also improve pride and self-worth and things like that.
If you look at, I've heard people talk about like MeasureQuick specifically, saying you're taking away some of the diagnostic skill from a technician if you use MeasureQuick. Jim Bergman is probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life when it comes to HVAC. And basically what you're doing is taking Jim's brain and you're carrying it with you at all times. And he's looking at all these different metrics, what's happening throughout the system. And if you use MeasureQuick, there's a grid view. The grid view shows you all your temperatures and everything going on inside the entire system. And it's looking at what things could potentially be wrong. You could easily miss something like that. There's so much information on one page that a normal technician, and even me, somebody that's been in the trade for 20 years, I could miss something.
Yeah, it's a lot of data, and it forces us to bring it together in one place so we can view it all at the same time on something like MeasureQuick or with any of the Bluetooth tool platforms. It really brings it up right in front of you.
And I'll share a quick anecdote that Jim shared with me. I think it was actually iManifold he was using at doing a beta test in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. And it was giving him some result. And he's like, oh, programming's wrong. And then he went to check and was like, oh, no, what I taught it, it remembered, and it was actually right. I am wrong. So what they call it, the singularity has already happened. Where artificial general intelligence, at least for MeasureQuick, it perhaps is on the horizon.
One other point with MeasureQuick, that everything is live readings. So the system dynamically changes as it runs. So all your targets change as it's operating. And if we're just using regular tools, we take single point return wet bulb temperature. We measure that, and then we're outside for a half hour, 45 minutes. Meanwhile, that return air wet bulb is changing inside of the house. So our targets change, and MeasureQuick captures all that in real time.
Good. Thanks, Eric, for mentioning that oversight. Now, Adam, what are your closing thoughts to share with our listeners?
I would say what helped me most in my career was just continuing to try to learn, and I'm learning more every single day. I'm not going to claim that I know everything, and I will never know everything about HVAC. So just stay hungry to learn and try to take every opportunity you can get to learn something new.
Excellent. You keep the curiosity thing going. That's what it sounds like you have. You're always curious about what's next.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in person at this event in September and see you online.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Building HVAC Science podcast. This podcast is a production of TruTech Tools Limited. And full disclosure, I'm the owner of TruTech. The opinions expressed are those of my guests, my co-host, or myself, depending on who is speaking, of course. If you're in the market for tools or test instruments mentioned in our podcast or looking in general, look at what TruTechTools.com has to offer, TruTechTools.com. And you can use the offer code HVACBS for a nice discount. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so you stay up to date as we release every week. I have been doing so continuously for the last 2 years, but have been in business as a podcast since 2017. So that would be 8 years. Other great trade-related resources and influencers include HomeDiagnosis.tv, AC Service Tech, MeasureQuick, HVA Chicks, HVAC Our School, Stephen Raridan, HVAC Reefer Guys, Tool Pros, Service Business Mastery, Quality HVAC, HVAC Overtime, which our guest today was part of, HVAC Videos, and the HVAC Grapevine. If you would like to reach out to us to suggest a topic, have a comment, feedback, whatever, contact us at marketing@TruTechTools.com, TruTechTools.com. We appreciate you listening to this podcast and hope to welcome you back to another episode where we cover another interesting topic, I'm sure, on the Building HVAC Science podcast. Take care.